Kirk Kooks. It's that time of the year again, isn't it, where it's horrible outside, it's cold, it's wet and miserable. And at this time of the year, there's nothing better than some nice warm winter comfort food. One of my favourite winter comfort foods is a nice chunky beef stew. So that is what we're going to make today. Beef stew with dumplings, and we're also going to make a nice fresh bloomer for some dipping bread. So let's quickly just get a bread dough made up. First thing you're going to want is 500 grams of plain flour. Ideally, you want a strong white flour. To that, you want to put 7 grams of yeast on one side and 10 grams of salt on the other side. Then you want 40 millilitres of olive oil and 320 millilitres of some lukewarm water. Then you want to pop that onto your mixer and give that a good mix. If you haven't got a mixer, just use a spoon. Once you've got that mixed, you're going to want to knead this for 5 to 10 minutes. If you've not got a stand mixer, you have to knead this by hand. Now if I was kneading this by hand, I'd have floured my surface and I'd have a bit of extra olive oil and extra flour obviously going into the dough from the hand kneading. So just to replicate that, just going to add a little bit of extra flour and a little bit of extra olive oil to the mixer before we start to knead. Just want a few sprinkles just to replicate the flour that you'd have if you was hand kneading. Then just a little drizzle of olive oil. Then we can start to knead. And then once you finish your kneading, you want to take your dough, add this to a nice greased bowl, cover, and leave that to prove till it's about tripled in size. So while our bread is left to prove, we can now actually get on with the stew. Veg I'm putting in this stew is I've got some parsnips, some potatoes, some carrots and some swede, and I've got 700 grams of diced beef. Our beef is really chunky, nice big chunks of beef, and I want the veg to be the same as that. So when we chop this up, it's going to be cut into nice large chunks so it's the same as the beef. Start off with our swede, give the swede a quick peel. Then we want to chop our swede into some nice big chunks. Once the veg is chopped, I'm just going to add it all into a colander. Then you take your carrots, we're not peeling these, we're just chopping these up into nice big chunks. Now we'll add those into the colander. Take our parsnips, chop the ends off, cut these into half. And again, just chop these into chunks. If you get a smaller parsnip, you don't necessarily have to chop that in half, just chop that the same as we did the carrots. And lastly, we just need to peel our potatoes. Same again, let's just chop the potatoes into nice chunks. And once we've got all our veg chopped up, just give this a quick rinse in the sink. And now we've got the veg done, we can start with the beef. Just take your beef chunks, put them into a bowl. Give that a season with a bit of salt and a bit of pepper. And finally, just add a tablespoon of flour. Just work all that together a bit, give it a nice mix. And then we're ready to start cooking. I'm going to be using a hob to oven pot. These are also known as Dutch ovens. If you haven't got one of these, you could just be cooking this on a pan right now. And then when it comes to putting it into the oven, just get like a big casserole dish or whatever the biggest thing you've got that can go in the oven is. You just have to cover it up with foil or something. So I'm going to be using this. I'm going to put this on the hob now, get this warming up a bit with a teaspoon of olive oil inside of it. So we just want to add about a tablespoon of olive oil to this. We just want to allow that to heat up. So then we want to take our beef and give this a nice browning. Get it nice and seared. So once the beef is starting to look near enough browned, we want to start adding our veg through and give this a nice bit of a searing too. So just give this a good mix through. Leave this for a few minutes just to let the veg just sweat out a little bit. And then the next thing we want to add to this is 500 ml of beer. I've got a Shipyard American IPA here. This is a really nice beer. It's a bit of a waste putting it in a stew. And this is one of my favourite beers. I first drank this one actually on the smallest pub on the planet. It's actually just down the road from me. You want to take your beer and add that. And then to that, we want to add 3 tablespoons of tomato puree, a sprinkling of some thyme, and a few cloves of some crushed garlic. Give that a quick mix. And then finally, pour some beef stock on this, enough just to cover everything. So once again, just give that a quick stir. And then that is now ready for the oven. The oven wants to be on about 150C, gas mark 2. And when you're putting your lid on, don't just completely seal it. Leave a little gap just to allow it to breathe a bit and just to let a bit of the moisture come out so it can really thicken that sauce up. So that's now going in the oven 2.5 hours. So we have our beef in the oven, our bread dough is proving. Only thing left to do now is get our dumpling mix ready. So for our dumplings we want 200 grams of self-raising flour. To the flour we want about 100 grams of beef suet. A little bit of mustard powder, about a teaspoon, and the same again with the parsley, about a teaspoon of parsley. Let's get that a little mix together, make a little well in the middle, then we want to add 6 tablespoons of cold water. And you just want to work that all together. This will slowly start coming together into clumps. Once it gets like this, just start trying to squeeze it up into a ball to get it into a sort of dough. So once you've got this balled up into a dough, we want to split this into 8 small balls. Just take each piece and ball that up. Then that leaves us with 8 dumplings ready to go in. We don't want the dumplings just yet, so I'm just going to put these in a bowl, cover the bowl, and now we've just got to leave those until our 2.5 hours is up on the stew. So our bread is now proven long enough. We can take this out. Just give your surface a quick little flour. Take your dough out, pour it onto the floured surface. You just want to gently fold this over just to get the air back out of it again. Keep folding it over onto itself. And once you're happy with that and you feel you've got most of the air out of it, you just want to fold it in on itself again from either sides. All 4 sides, so you've got a bit of a seam at the bottom like that. Pinch it all together, turn it over. Then you want to place that on a baking sheet with some greaseproof paper on it. Make sure it's nice and round in like a bloomery shape. So then just cover that with a damp cloth. You just want to leave that for about 30 minutes till it's doubled in size again, and that'll be ready for the oven. Preheat your oven to gas mark 7. You also want to keep the bread moist while it's cooking. So while your oven's preheating, get yourself a little dish, put some cold water in it and put that in the very bottom of the oven. This just helps steam the oven a bit while your bread cooks later on. And once your bread's proven, just give it a little dusting of flour. With a sharp knife, just cut some slits into this. And that is now ready to go into our preheated oven. And then when your bread's finished, 30 minutes later, you should have a nice loaf that looks like this. So I'll take this off of here and put it on the cooling rack. And then we'll just leave that now until the stew's cooked. Right, so the stew's had 2.5 hours now, so we want to take that out. Take off the lid. And then we want to add our dumplings. And that now wants to go back in the oven, uncovered, for another 30 minutes. And now the stew should be about ready to come out the oven. And there you have it, our completed rustic chunky stew and dumplings. I guess we want to give this a taste. Grab a nice big dumpling. And then we'll just cut off a nice piece of bread. I guess now all that's left is the taste test. I mean, this is going to be nice. It's horrible and cold outside. This is the sort of thing you want on a day like this. See, look, the size of the chunks of the veg we've got in here. So good. Nice chunk of dumpling. Those dumplings are really nice, really fluffy and soft. Let's take a piece of this bread and just have a little dip inside this nice gravy. And just give that a try. You cannot beat a nice bit of fresh bread with stew. Highly recommend you give this one a go at home. It's such a nice stew when you've got these horrible cold winter days on us. You can't beat something like this. So that is everything for today. Tune in Friday. We're actually going to see if this will pizza. We're going to put this on a pizza. See how that goes. I'm going to go and eat this.